In this video, I want to talk about the suppression of behavior and how balanced training, aversive training is focused on suppressing behavior. And this video is a really good example of that. So let's get started.
Today we're taking this dog that has a horrible history, under-neglected, underfed, having problems with dogs, having problems with people. We're taking it out for its first heavy socialization session to a very crowded area. With that being said, this dog already has his obedience training done. He already has his remote collar conditioning done. So we're going to be using that to our advantage to help us with the socialization process.
So we know the dog has fear issues and trauma issues. What he's focusing on is obedience. Now, obedience can be very good, but it's not a good way to think about handling emotion that is driving behavior. Obedience only makes the trainer or the handler feel in control. The dog is wearing a shock collar. He has conditioned the e-collar to every time he says no, he is using the e-collar. And I can tell you that the words of no to good boy is probably about 15 to 1, if not 20 to 1, which means 20 shocks to one treat.
When we're at a market, when we're at a new area, we're always gauging what are our competing motivators, what are the things that are motivating the dog to do things other than what they're supposed to be doing. Nope. So we had him in a sit, he's not sitting, so we say no, we give him a correction for that. Once he goes back into the sit, we're good. We continue with what we're focused on, which is gauging his eye contact on us, okay?
So assessing eye contact is not necessarily the best way to go about to seeing where your dog is comfort-wise. If you could imagine being in an environment that's a little scary and someone demanding you look them in the eye, it's probably not going to make you feel any more comfortable. It's probably going to make you more nervous because then you can't protect yourself at the other angles. And unless that person you're with is the absolute secure attachment safety net that you have, and that there is nothing that they've ever done to cause any fear, then that might work for a moment. But I want to go back and slow this video down to show you how this guy is completely missing the signs that this dog is nervous and afraid. And then I want to show you, which you've already watched it, but you didn't catch it. Watch how this guy corrects the dog for doing something normal and natural to deal with something in the environment that is stressful. Let's watch it in slow motion. So when we start out, the dog is already giving quick licks, scanning the environment, ears are back. Dog is very uncomfortable. And then we watch the dog tap into the natural behavior of fight, flight, or freeze, tries to flee or flight, but yet gets corrected for it. And you'll see that this dog is trying to avoid the trainer because, again, the dog is feeling very conflicted. Tail down, body's low, the head is low. This dog is exhibiting signs of discomfort, fear, and tension. And now not only does he have to worry about the environment around, the car, the people, the wheelchairs, the strollers, but now he has to worry about the guy that's on the other end of the leash, who is not only using a prong collar and using that to correct him, but he's also using a shock collar. And he finally gives one treat to the dog, but unfortunately it's bad timing because he waits until all the distractions are gone before he rewards the dog. So right now it's not starting out in a positive way for this dog.
Okay, all we're doing right now, we're gauging his energy levels. We're gauging, is there any anxiety? Is there any insecurity? Is there any dominance popping up, okay? What types of things are creating arousal in him or exciting him?
The very beginning of the video, he talked about the dog was being neglected and was suffering from trauma. I mean, the dog has fear. And so for him to say that he's assessing these different things is kind of odd. But the one that's really odd that he's assessing is dominance. I don't know a lot of dogs who suffer from fear who actually think of themselves as natural leaders. So This dog is not showing any type of dominance, and he mentions it again later in the video we'll talk about. But what I'm seeing here is he is missing out on a lot of signs that the dog is not comfortable, is not secure, and does not feel safe. Unfortunately, the guy's not helping him feel safe because he's also still correcting him with the shock collar and the prong collar.
Looking at all the traffic, good. He makes a good decision to look at me. After he's just observing some traffic, then he goes back to observing traffic. I keep doing what I'm doing, which is just moving around, saying good whenever he gives me eye contact and rewarding him.
So he talks about the dog making a good choice to give him eye contact. The thing about eye contact is that dogs often see looking into eyes as confrontational. So the fact that we force them to do that is not appropriate. Also, that dog is not necessarily making a good decision based on the fear by giving you eye contact. Probably giving you eye contact, wondering if they're going to get corrected again for all the things that are happening, because it's very easy for dogs to associate environmental cues with those corrections. Every time a kid walks by, if the dog stands up and gets corrected because it broke a stay, then the dog is going to start associating that that kid is bad, not that they're breaking the stay.
Now that we've got a pretty consistent level of eye contact on me, in the presence of all these distractions, these competing motivators, we would say, okay, that's his baseline. He is observing things, but he's also most of the time giving me eye contact, so I'm feeling good about his energy levels. I'm feeling good about his excitability. Okay, there's nothing wrong with observing things. We want him to observe things, but we also want him to make good decisions, which is giving us eye contact in case he gets distracted by something, okay?
So he believes that good decisions is about giving him eye contact. So I feel like right now this portion of the video is more about him and not so much about how the dog is feeling. I do love the fact that he appreciates that the dog is observing things, because that's what needs to happen. But instead of waiting to reward the dog for the eye contact, we should be rewarding the dog for observing things in the environment without reacting. This dog is exhibiting great behavior when observing the environment, and that's when we want to ramp up the rewards. This guy is still a little too focused on the correction aspect, but also way too focused on getting that eye contact and believing that the dog is in a place of responsiveness just because he's giving the eye contact, when in actuality, the dog is learning that the eye contact is the surefire way to not get corrected.
So now we're going to go through some obedience to see, even at the market being right behind the camera here, how is his obedience looking as we have people coming and going. Okay, so we got him in a sit right now, so let's do some healing. Heel, right? If we're healing, remember we want to be able to turn to the right, nope, or turn to the left, and we want to see him staying with us on our left side. Okay, if I back up, I want to see him, nope, coming to my left side, so he wasn't doing that. So I say no, nope, I give him a little correction there on the remote collar. Once he's in good position, then he gets a reward if he maintains that position. When we stop, we expect him to sit right here, so notice how he went in front of me. Things are distracting him, right? So I just slide down the leash here, I bring him right back to my left side. Okay, once he's here on my left side, I'm just using the leash as a guide. He's gonna go ahead and do his automatic sit like he's supposed to.
So he's gauging obedience to see how well the dog responds to him in this distracting environment. I am all about gauging whether a dog is responsive or not. However, when we're looking for responsiveness, what we want to do is ask for a behavior that the dog is really good at. And if the dog is unable to do the behavior, we should not be punishing them for that or correcting them for that. That is telling us the dog is not prepared for the environment that we are in, which means that we are over threshold. Instead, this guy corrects the dog using his choke chain, prong collar, and the shock collar to force the dog to be obedient, even though the dog is communicating that he's not comfortable. This is why suppression of behavior occurs. This dog learns to suppress the emotion of fear and to look like they are right in line so they can avoid the corrections that they're getting. This dog's getting a correction on the prong collar and a shock collar. So balanced, I'm not real sure of. Not when you're using two forms of punishment versus one form of reinforcement. So here the dog is still saying, I am uncomfortable and I am not prepared to go into what you want me to go into. The guy should have heard this, seen this, and removed the dog somewhere where he's feeling more comfortable and where he can be more successful in the training that we have given him.
All right, so far with the obedience, there's a delay in him performing the obedience. He does need some correction reminders along the way here with all the distractions going on. Okay, Paco, down. Nope. Good. Again, needs a correction reminder in that case for going down.
I am not a fan of putting a fearful dog into a down. I think that makes them too vulnerable and that can increase their anxiety. I don't even like to ask them to sit. I want them to know that they have the ability to fight, flight, or freeze. When we have a dog on a leash, when we require them to do a stationary behavior for fear of repercussions of a shock collar or a prong collar, then we are taking away the dog's ability to flight, which means that we're going to leave them with two options, and that's either fight or freeze. Fight will typically get them more corrections, and then freeze is going to make the trainer or handler, owner, whoever, feel like the dog is doing better, when in actuality the dog has learned helplessness and is in that full compliance, which means the dog is just doing nothing in order to avoid any type of correction.
Entry into the distraction area. I'm going to have a left grip on the leash, remote collar in my right hand so I can give corrections easily. And all I'm focused on is moving through a small section of the crowd here, not going through a huge section of the crowd. I'm just going through a small section here to see, engage how he's performing. Okay.
So he believes this is a small crowd. The problem is it may not be that many people, but they're very congested, and that small space is going to feel more scary for dogs that are fearful. You can also see this dog got a couple of corrections and 0 good boys for going through this not so small crowd.
Okay, nope. Anytime he goes a little bit too far out of position, I'll say no, I'll give him a correction for that.
So you have a dog who is fearful of people, and a trainer who is shocking the dog for sniffing out people. This dog is not very far from this guy, but you can see that the little bit of head movement away from this guy's knee is creating a correction for this dog. This is absolutely inappropriate, but this is exactly the way balanced trainers and aversive trainers work. They focus on what we don't want, and this dog has very, very, very little room for mistake before he gets corrected. This is only going to increase the dog's fear, and it's going to make the fuse much shorter, which means the dog is going to be able to handle much less of the fear before exploding.
So we got some dogs up here ahead of us. Nope, nope. So now that we're now that we're inside the crowd, nope. Noticing more distractibility with doing his obedience. Nope, nope. Good. Paco, down. Nope. Nope. Good. So I noticed a little bit more distractibility with his obedience.
So I do encourage you to go back and watch this little section here. I'm not going to slow it down because I have a lot to cover. This dog is not comfortable. This dog doesn't want to sit, doesn't want to lay down because it doesn't trust what's in the environment. And not trusting makes it difficult to be compliant. And he is exhibiting exact behavior we would expect to see for a dog who is over threshold and is fearful. But instead of understanding that and seeing it, this guy is correcting him with the shock collar and with the prong collar, therefore suppressing the behavior of being uncomfortable. The dog is like, well, why even feel that way and show you I'm feeling that way when you're just going to correct me? So there we go. There's one of our first big examples of suppressing behavior.
You just want to maintain consistency if you're doing this with your dog. And also, before we got into the crowd, he was very responsive to the remote collar, as he should be. Once we're inside the crowd, he's not as responsive as he should be. So in that case, I give him just a little bit of leash guidance. I use the leash to guide him into those obedience positions that he might be struggling to get into and out of.
So this guy just said everything that we have told you guys about. The guy is using the shock collar and used it outside of the park area where the dog responded well. But once he got into distraction, which is over threshold for this dog, the shock collar is not working as well, which leaves him a couple of options. One, he's choosing to use the prong collar more. But most, and I'm surprised he didn't, and maybe he does and just doesn't say anything, they increase the level of the shock. Why? Because they need it to suppress the behavior so it makes them look good. Because if the dog exhibits the behavior that is expressing the emotion of fear, then they don't look good. Again, this is just false advertisement, and it's not good for the dog. So the dog is learning, hey, I can't express fear, otherwise I'm going to get punished. And if I, keep expressing fear, the punishment's going to get worse and worse. This is the part where balanced trainers, and not just balanced trainers, I've seen positive reinforcement trainers do this as well. They put the dog over threshold. They set the dog up for failure and just create more issues.
Now notice as we're inside the crowd like this, he's very distracted. He's not paying attention to me at all, not giving me any eye contact. Hips are not rocked over. Okay, so this might be the extent of the heavy traffic that we get into today. So now my objective, we got a small dog right over here. He looked at it a little bit, he's looking away, lots of observations going on. Maintaining his downstay though, okay, so that's what we're looking for. So right now, what I'm gauging, okay, this is very distracting for him. We want to make sure this is a good experience and we have good improvement in behavior before we end this session.
So he thinks that the dog looking around is just him being distracted and not giving him eye contact. What this dog is doing is observing his environment and making plans. Does he have an escape route? Because safety is very important. He is trying to calculate what is in the environment and find out kind of what does he need to do with it? How does he need to feel about it? Where does he need to put it? Where does he need to store it in his brain and in his memory? This guy is still so worried about his obedience that he's missing out on the dog who is making good choices. Right here, he's making great choices. He's looking at his environment. He watched this dog go by and he did not react. He gave a calming signal. He stayed in his down in this perfect situation to create calmness with that dog walking by, because that dog was nice and relaxed. He had some head turns. He did a yawn. He did a great job at making the choices to observe his environment and not react. But instead of this guy giving praise and rewarding, he is saying the dog is just distracted and is not giving him eye contact, so he's not being as good as he could. And their job is to make sure his behavior is better by the end of the session. This is the difference between balanced trainers, dog trainers, and those that really understand behavior. We're not looking at improving behavior. We're looking at improving emotion. How does this dog feel about the environment? By changing the way they feel about the environment, that's how we start to get different responses to the environment.
So what are things I'm looking for? I want to see some good eye contact from him. I also want to see him be able to maintain this downstay, which we already have, with little dogs moving by, other dogs, people, things like that. And then I also want to start seeing some relaxation from his hips. So let's see if we can get these things knocked out during this session.
So he has a lot of things he wants to see. And in his mind, because he wants to see those things, he's going to do what he has to do to get those things, which means increasing the corrections and the punishment in order to decrease the behavior that is not on his list of what he wants to see. Again, he's more focused on external behavior and not focused on how the dog is actually feeling. This is, again, a perfect example of his mindset is about suppressing behavior, not helping the dog learn to have coping skills, to regulate his emotions, and to regulate his central nervous system.
So I'll just start moving around here. Notice how he gets up a little bit. Nope, 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 nope. Notice the leash guidance right here. Nope. Paco down. Nope. 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 Good. So every time I say no, I am bumping on the remote collar. but notice the leash guidance. He's giving me some good eye contact here.
So the dog starts to move because he doesn't know what else to do in his environment. His handler is not communicating to him on what is needed, so he doesn't feel safe. So movement is very normal. Why? Because fight, flight, freeze. And if you counted, I'm sure you didn't, that was 9 corrections, 9 shocks, plus the prong collars, pulling on that, to his 1 good with no treat.
Moment in time. Could be some additional corrections, you know, things like that. So we got this dog walking by, staring at him. He's looking at the dog. Nope. He gets up. So I immediately, nope, correction. Also notice his tail. Nope. Nope. Paco down. Nope. 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 Down. Nope. Good.
So the dog was standing up to protect himself. The tail showed some neutrality, interest, but was really a nice sign. And that time, instead of rewarding the dog for as he was looking, he waited for the dog to do something he didn't like, and he gave 14 shocks to 1 good in that video.
Okay, so when that dog walked by, if you notice his tail immediately went up and started wagging, which means he's feeling dominant, he's feeling confident in that situation.
So he's completely wrong about that. The dog was not trying to show dominance. The dog was using natural calming signals and body language to communicate to that other dog. The only one that was trying to show dominance here is the trainer.
FAS, nope, nope. Good, Paco, sit, nope. Good, Paco, down, nope. Nope. Good. So what we did here was there's a walkway right here. We just got outside this walkway. We put Paco into a downstay again. He's struggling to do some of that obedience with this level of distraction. So I'm just providing him that leash guidance as we go here. Nope. And also that remote collar correction. Okay. And I'm just finely tuning my levels based on how he's performing in these situations. Okay, Paco. Good. So we got people walking by. I say his name. He gives me eye contact. We say good. We give him the reward. We want to build up that eye contact response, okay?
So after he's walked the dog through the crowd, he is putting him into another downstay. So he's changed the environment, which any dog that has fear, a change in an environment can be frightening and triggering because now we don't know what to expect. And with people walking in all directions, the dog is unsure. And so we have that fear, but you hear him talk about how now he's going to escalate his punishment, his correction based on the dog's ability to be responsive. Again, the eye contact is not what is going to tell you if the dog is feeling comfortable. The eye contact is coming from, hey, I'd rather you not shock me again or, choke me on that prong collar. So if I just look at you, that seems to be the safest. I will say this time he was a little more balanced on the nose versus the goods and the treats.
Also, I am noticing that his eyes are getting a little bit red, which tells me, okay, he's getting a little bit stressed as we're out and about in this situation, which we can see because he's not performing his obedience like he would outside of a distraction. Okay, so that's just one thing that we're noticing as we go here. Okay, Paco.
So there were a lot of signs that the dog was uncomfortable in the very beginning of this training session. The red eyes doesn't necessarily mean the dog is stressed. It could be allergies. It could be just environmental factors that's causing that. But either way, glad to see that this guy is recognizing that Paco is a little nervous. The problem is that he's going to keep pushing him to behave and do his obedience regardless of that. The other issue I have here is that he keeps talking about these being distractions. Distractions are very different from triggers. Triggers is going to create an emotional response. Therefore, you'll get an external behavior. Distraction is just what it says. It's distracting the dog from being able to listen and be responsive. What this dog is going through is not about distraction. It's about fear. These people, the dogs, the children, the scenario, the situation, the environment, they're all causing fear in this dog. It's very different from a dog being distracted. So don't let those words try to change your thought process about what's going on here. This dog is not distracted. This dog is triggered and is feeling an emotional response that is then being punished by this trainer.
Nope. So last time we walked up to this area, we were just on the outside of where most people are walking. Now I'm just going to kind of follow these people straight out, see how he performs.
We've already watched the dog be over threshold at the beginning of the video. Well, as he's walked through and now creating more fear in this dog, he is, instead of helping him be successful and getting him out of that scenario, he's now walking back through the crowd, but walking in a closed-in space, which is going to create more fear for this dog. And in this guy's mind, he just wants to see how the dog's going to perform. That, for me, is talking about the trainer trying to show off, not actually caring about how the dog feels. Because at this point, the dog is incapable, based on the fear, incapable of actually being responsive. And you'll see in the next video how he has to jack up his punishment.
Okay, nope. If he goes a little bit too far ahead of me, I'll just say no, give a correction. Okay, if he's doing a good job, then he's good to go right next to me. Nope. Nope, nope. Yeah, I'll just dip around these people right here. We got this dog right here on the other side of this fence that he's focused on, distracted with. Notice his tail's coming up. Nope, 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 nope. Nope, 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 no, no, no. Good.
So he makes it challenging to go back through the crowd in an enclosed space that the dog couldn't even do at the beginning of the exercise. The last thing we want to do when we're doing a training exercise or a session is make things harder at the end, because at that point the dog is already over threshold. This dog was over threshold at the beginning of the video. So then when he walks next to where the dog is behind the fence, this dog is obviously jacked up, doesn't know what to do because no one is telling him what to do. Instead, this guy chooses to use the punishment, and that was 15 no's, which means 15 pushes on the button, because that's what he says. Every time he says no, he pushes the button, which shocks the dog, to one good that didn't even include a treat. This is what your balanced trainers are doing. We are punishing bad behavior and not actually supporting the dog and teaching the dog what is more appropriate in this situation.
No. 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 Nope. 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 Paco, sit. Good.
11 no's means 11 shocks that this dog received, along with a couple of yanks on the prong collar because he was not attached and Velcro to this guy's leg. This is absolutely not taking in consideration the dog's emotions. No one is guiding him. No one is supporting him. No one is making him feel safe. And this is why we talk about balanced trainers, aversive trainers suppress behavior by suppressing emotions. He doesn't want this dog to exhibit emotions. He just wants this dog to be obedient, not caring about the emotions. So suppression is real. At some point, this dog, as well as this dog was walking through here, this dog would have gotten so many good boys from me by the way he's walking. He is walking beautifully. Now, I don't know if he's walking beautifully because the prong collar and the shock collar. More than likely, that's the case. But I could guarantee you I could walk this dog through there using positive reinforcement and not one time needing to shock this dog. And that is the difference between teaching what we want and just suppressing the emotions that are giving us the behavior that makes us not look good.
As we're walking out, we had a situation with the dog at a fence. Paco started, reacting to that dog. We notice his tail goes up. We notice it's wagging, so he's getting aroused by it. He's getting dominant by that dog being right there. So that's your body language there. And he's basically getting so focused on that dog running up and down that fence that he's just completely not caring about obedience, not caring about eye contact, anything like that, okay?
When you hear a professional say that their dog is showing dominance and it was getting all dominant, and that was the body language, you should just go ahead and know that they don't understand body language. And they are stuck in this myth of it's all about dominance. When you have a dog who doesn't care about obedience because of another dog that's running a fence, that is because dog's priority is avoiding conflict. Avoiding conflict is the most important part of a dog's world. Obedience is for you. Obedience is a human thing. But avoiding conflict is more important. They use body language to do so. So yes, avoiding conflict is very natural to a dog. That is more important than being obedient to you. If we don't understand this, we should not be working with dogs, because all we're doing at that point is taking away their ability to handle conflict and confrontation, therefore creating a dog who is reactive. So overall, this trainer was not being supportive to this dog, was not teaching the dog what to do, was not teaching the dog how to handle emotions and how to feel differently on things that are in the environment. All he was focused on was suppressing the emotion by punishing the behavior that he sees. And if the dog can't show the behavior, then he must be fixed. No, the dog is still feeling all those emotions. It is going to come out somewhere else. So as you can see, suppression is not fixing anything. Punishing behavior is not going to fix your dog's fearfulness or nervousness or anxiety. We have to learn to support our dogs. Teach them what we want. Help them learn how to self-regulate, how to calm the nervous system, how to be in homeostasis, whereas their brain is just in rest mode. And obedience training doesn't do that. So the next time someone says, just put a shock collar or a prong collar on them, know that all they're trying to do is suppress your dog's behavior by suppressing the emotion, not fixing anything. If you want to learn more about body language, I have a wonderful seminar on-demand course that you can take through our website on understanding dog communication and how dogs use body language to avoid conflict. It's important that you can read your dog's body language so that you can get them out of situations that are little scary. We also encourage you to listen to our podcast wherever you stream. Sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss out on events and videos like this. Be sure you subscribe the YouTube page and follow us on all of our social media channels. If your dog is suffering from any type of reactivity, fearfulness, anxiety, fear, aggression, contact us. We can help you using positive methods. We will work alongside you, and we will never ask you to do something that is going to be harmful or painful to your dog.